Dan, it's great to be speaking to you today, especially on the back of your new release, and obviously the fantastic work that you do with Red and White Dynamite. Tell us about your book, Dan, and probably where the inspiration came from your new book.
So thanks for having me on, Chris. The book is called The Robin Sings Again, and basically it's about Rovers' previous season in 2021. Well, I say basically it's not all about 2021 in particular, because there's a lot of historical tie-ins to our past and then to the present, of course, but it actually starts with a prologue which dates all the way back to our foundations in 1882, and then I worked from 1882 all the way until the start of 2021, so it really sets the tone for the book, if you like. And in that prologue I have some tie-ins with Great Britain and social history for the city of Hull itself, going back to the 19th century, just stuff like that, just to paint a picture of how it was back then and how our club started and how we survived all those times. Because I don't know how many people know out there, but as a club, before you and I, Chris, were even born or thought of, we've gone through so many trials and tribulations. It's quite incredible that the club's still here in many ways, not just back in the 90s, but even as far back as the 1890s. So all that's in there as well. It all builds up, as I say in the prologue, to the start of the book. So it's that's quite the journey. And as for the book itself, it just doesn't document on the field action, but off the field action as well, because last season was so hectic off the field with COVID, the rebrand, the stadium plans that the clubs have got, the infamous Elite Academy decision, and less said on that, probably the better, and stuff like that. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack in there, and it's all in the book, and it's all there.
So I suppose the question is, Dan, why this season and not other seasons? Why did you decide to pick up the pen and start writing a book based on this season?
Well, the plan was actually always to do a book regardless. So back in the summer of 2020, I began writing because it's a passion of mine, and Rovers are a love of mine, so it was the perfect ingredients. But regardless of if we went down, which is ironically what a lot of people felt we might have done at the start of last season, given how we've done for the past 5 or so years. But regardless of whether we win the grand final or not, the plan was always to write the book. And as it turns out, as we kept going, we had a really good season after recruiting really well off the field in pre-season and that. And I had a feeling that we'd do well, but I wasn't quite sure that we'd do as well as we did. Yeah. But as I kept writing it, we're looking good for a playoff spot, and then we have that dip in about August, September time, and then we get back on the horse, get in the playoffs. And after we beat Warrington, then you think, God, we're only a game away from Old Trafford. And then I'm thinking, God, this could be history in the making. Obviously, we didn't quite make it in the end, but like I said, Chris, the plan was always actually to write a book, because I have seen on social media, I've got some stick, particularly from that lot across the river, and even some of our own fans, that it's celebrating mediocrity for writing the book. But actually what I'm doing is documenting our history, because our history, I mean, it is documented. For example, there's the fantastic book that Roger Pugh wrote on our history of the Robins and things like that. But for example, I would have loved it from a personal perspective if we had a documentation like I've wrote 100 years ago in the 20s, that sort of time period. I'd love something like that. Even in the 70s and 80s, there's not much Rovers literacy out there. It is a dying art form, if not a non-existent art form.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of lengths I've gone to cover it. So
yeah,
it was always the plan.
Yeah, so take us through the process out, because there'll be people who are interested, who are watching and listening to this, will be thinking, they're interested in the book, but a lot of people will be interested in actually how you write a book. How do you go about, starting it, getting your ideas, and then getting it down onto paper?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I say, it's a passion for writing, and once you get going, and that you can't really stop. But what you do is you've got to come up with a formula. I'd say, for example, my formula in my book is more of it's almost like a diary type format in terms of how it's presented. For example, on the 12th of July, Mikey Lewis signed the contract, and then we played Salford on the 30th July. So it's all in chronological order. It's like that. So you it goes like that.
Yeah.
So the match reports are not too dissimilar to what you would see like in a newspaper, or a website or something like that, and it goes from there. But obviously, when I'm writing, I do it in a style that I feel would hook somebody, you know, because it can't be mundane or anything like that, because people will get bored. So it's all done, all written in a style that appeals to somebody that's going to read it.
Yeah, so, excellent. And when you look back, I suppose, is the what was your highlight of the season, and is that sort of documented in the book?
Yeah, it was the win at Warrington in the playoffs. It's got to be that. I mean, as you see on the front cover, which I've got here, it's fabulous. Can you see it?
Yes, fabulous. Yeah.
Thank you. That was I'll just a shout out as well while we're on the topic to my illustrator Josh Fair for doing that. But yeah, as you can see on the cover.
Yeah, so for the people who are listening on the podcast, it's a picture of Tony Smith, isn't it? And then a picture of Mikey Lewis.
That's the one, Chris. Yeah, that's from Warrington, especially.
Yeah.
I believe the post-match celebration with Smith and the try celebration from Lewis. So just encapsulating that moment at Warrington, I feel that was the highlight of the season. So yes. A little trivia thing was, and somewhere in the cover, I was hoping to get the moment when Joe Keys scored at Newcastle against Lee, because I thought that was one of the real feel-good moments of the season when Crooks seemed destined to go over the try line, and then he passes it to Keys in the support, and you know that was a standout moment as well. But it has to be the Warrington game, because I don't think many people, including our own fans, gave us a chance. I think it was a case of, well, we've got this far, and you know this will do for this year. But instead, we went there, weathered the storm at the start, and beat them. So brilliant. But yeah, like before I forget, Chris, as I say, the plan was to get the Keys and Crooks moment on the book cover, but we couldn't fit it in. But I think the cover's done. You know, it's a good job as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've highlighted two really special moments. Obviously, I think the Joe Keys try sort of highlighted the team unity and the bond that the players had, because you had someone who would coming out of the cold really and put in a really good performance, and the fact that Ben Crooks fought enough of him to make sure he went over the line, it just showed that team spirit and togetherness. And obviously Warrington, you know, the thousands of Rovers fans travelling over to Warrington on that Friday night if anybody thought that would have won, you know, I can't imagine there being, especially when you saw the team lineup as well. I think everybody thought, do you know what, we'll have a good time, we'll celebrate a good season, but nobody expected the victory. So two really special moments there. Take us back in your book though to COVID, and because that was a particularly tough time for not just watching Rovers, but for people's lives in general.
Absolutely. So COVID is covered quite in depth because, like I said, I want this book to be a historical resource. So when people look back in, heaven forbid, 100 years' time, you know, they get these moments as they were captured. It's up, well, in relation to COVID, it's like going back to 1918 with the Spanish flu and things like that, how it inflicted the world. But to answer your question, with COVID, yeah, it is covered quite in depth. And you're right, Chris, it did affect our fan base, obviously everybody in the world as well, but not getting to see the team just as things were starting to click as well. But what I will say about COVID is, apart from all the frustrating delays that the club had and the fans had as well, as soon as the fans got to get back into the games, through the turnstiles and stuff, that's when the team really started to play its best rugby, in my opinion. So it was actually kind of beautiful on how it all turned out in that sense, because, I mean, the first game that we did get back to was against Castleford away, and I know we didn't have many fans there, but they witnessed one of the better games of the season, that comeback win, for example. So I think COVID, it was obviously mostly negative, as everybody knows, but the way it did turn out, with the way the fans did get back in eventually, it worked out for the best. But another thing as well about the book is that the very first game back that we had after COVID was against Lee at home, in terms of the home fixture, and that's covered quite in depth in terms of the process, what it was like in the terraces, you know, because obviously the club at that point had procedures in place to prevent anything bad happening with COVID and stuff. So that's all documented in there as well. So yeah, I do go quite in depth on COVID. And when I was speaking about mundane subjects before, with games potentially, well, COVID was definitely a mundane subject. But I think I presented it in the best possible way, because with COVID, it's not like there's no razzmatazz to COVID. It is what it is. It's a virus, and you know it ruined our fandom from 2020 until mid 2021. So I had to cover it, but it wasn't my favourite subject, I must admit. But again, important for the future generations to learn about.
I think so, because it was a crazy season, wasn't it? You know, and if you'd have tried to predict what was going to happen in terms of fans not being allowed in the ground, and then fans being allowed in, and then, you know, to some of the games that fans got to witness, and then to end up with a Warrington victory, and then Catalan's, you know, semi-final defeat. You know, it was a crazy season, so it's fantastic that you've been able to document that. Where can people get the book from?
It's available exclusively on Amazon. It's priced at $6.99, which I hope is reasonable for people out there, and it's $3.99 as well on Kindle. So Amazon, just search The Robin Sings Again, or The Robin Sings Again Dan Crowther, and you'll be able to find it there. So I'm hoping that it's going to be a great stocking filler for people at Christmas. I mean, even people who are watching this might not be interested in reading, but somebody in the family might be, especially a Rovers fan, you know, of a certain vintage. They might be interested in buying it for a granddad, a grandmother, the parents and stuff like that. So I think it makes a great present as well. It could be a collector's item as well. So I mean, there's all that going into it. So I think it will make a great Christmas present as well.
And the feedback that I've seen, definitely on social media, has been really positive, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been great. Everybody who's read it or read some of it so far, most of them have got back to me, and all of them have said, you know, it's good, and they've really enjoyed it. A well thought out book and a good read. And if anyone's not seen it so far, Mike Carter of Hull KR Shirts has written a lengthy review on it, and he had a lot of kind words to say about it, which I was really pleased about. So yes, the feedback's been good, thankfully.
And is this a one-off, or do you envisage more books coming out?
Well, my plan is to do a decade of books at least. That would be great if I can do that, because again, it's documenting the club's history. It's what I want to do. That's the plan with all of this. So I do envisage a decade of books at least. That's what I hope to do, as long as the support's there, which I must say the support's been tremendous so far from our fans. I've sold over 130 books as a time of recording, so the support's been terrific. If it continues like this, then it's great. And of course, as a club, it's looking good right now as well, because I really do believe, Chris, that last season could be viewed as a watershed moment for our club. I really do, in terms of becoming a success again, as it was in the past.
Yeah, and I don't know how well our podcast would have done if we'd have had another bad season. So I think you're definitely right. There's a feel good factor at the moment around the club, isn't there? And you know, we're excited about the next season now, because Tony Smith's kept a group of players together, and we've added that, haven't we, with some starring Lachlan Coots, and then we've added some workhorses in the forward. So it's exciting times both on and off the field. For some people who are watching, listening to this, they might not know you're the man behind Red and White Dynamite. So tell us how that came about, and where people can find the Red and White Dynamite.
So Red and White Dynamite was a little bit like the book in the sense of there's a lack of a Facebook page, you know, for the fans to speak about stuff. There is groups and they do a good job as well, but I thought it was lacking a page as well. So that's how that pretty much came about. It was to really to serve the fans, you know, ideally, like yourself and Joe, you know, doing the podcast. It's a little bit like that, you know, giving back to the fans, as it were. So yeah, that's been quite the success as well.
And where can people find you on social media?
So it's Red and White Dynamite dash Hull KR on Facebook, and I believe on Twitter it's a bit more complex. It's RNW underscore Dynamite HKR, I believe. Might not be 100% on that one, but admittedly Facebook's our main base, and we've also got on Instagram now, which, God, I hope you're not going to ask me about that because I can't quite remember the app, but I'm sure you can provide it anywhere at the end.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we wanted to get you on here, Dan, is to, you know, we're a big believer in helping each other out, and you know, Rovers supporters, we're all one big family, and the more we can help each other, the better. So people listening, people watching, you know, we urge you to go out and buy this book. I definitely hope I've got it in my stocking for Christmas, because I'm looking forward to reading it. But before we finish, Dan, what's the hopes for next season, and where do you think you see Rovers finishing?
The hopes for next season for me would be getting in the playoffs again, because anything less would probably be it's tough to say an underachievement considering how poorly we've done in general for the past 5 or so years. But I think getting in the playoffs would be an achievement again. Problem is, we're a big club, and with big club comes expectations. So even when we were doing poorly, we still had that expectation on us, but now the expectation is going to be heightened. So there is going to be a bit more pressure there. For instance, we've got Wigan the first game. I think that's a brilliant opportunity to get off to a good start because they're a club very much in transition. And last season, comparatively speaking, they did poorly, even though they got in the playoffs. So that's a good start for us, I think, in terms of opportunity. I think if you told us that we were going to play Wigan last season at home for the first game, we'd probably not be looking forward to it. But that just shows you how sport changes, even on 1 year. You know, I think a lot of our fans will be feeling confident for that one, for example. So, like I said, the expectations changed at the club now. The club seems to have got a lot of big plans off the field as well, in terms of the rebrand is ambitious, the stadium plans that they're alleged to have. I mean, listening to your podcast with Jenna Brooks, Chris, she said that the players felt like they could have won the grand final, and that says a lot. They had that genuine belief there. So there's a lot of confidence at the club from within, and that'll only bode well for the future. I must say, one hope that I do have going into 2022 is that our attendance is improved, because it was slightly disappointing the back end of last season. It was, I think, the success on the field glossed over it, but yeah, it was a little bit disappointing in terms of the attendances. I believe we averaged 6.3k, so it was down on 2020, which was around 7,000. So yes, that was a slight disappointment. Not to end things on a bad note, but yeah.
No, and it's a great plug. So anyone watching, listening, you can catch our season review with Sky Sports, Jenna Brooks, on that is available on our YouTube channel, and of course you can go to all good podcast providers. What I would say is you're right. I think the crowds do need to improve. I think the players are doing it on the pitch. I think the off the field stuff's going really well. Now the Rovers fans need to start backing the boys, because if we can all move together as one unit, I think it's going to be a great season for us. So before we sign off, just remind everyone again where we can get the book from.
Yeah, so you can get the book on Amazon, just exclusively on Amazon. $6.99 for the paperback, $3.99 for the Kindle. Great read by all accounts. I'm biased, so I'm not going to say anything, but everyone's saying it's a great read, great Christmas present, the historical resource for generations to come, and like I say, a great stocking for collector's items. So yeah, $6.99 for the paperback and $3.99 for the Kindle, Chris.
Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully once the season gets underway, we'll probably get you back on the podcast, because it'd be great to speak to you about Rovers, and hopefully we'll be talking about the successful Hull Kingston Rovers.